Manchester United have collected consecutive Old Trafford Premier League wins and climbed to within 2 points of the Champions League places, following the most difficult of fixture schedules in a crucial campaign for Ruben Amorim. We're going to chat about the rainy evening under Manchester lights and the fallout from subsections of support, while covering all of your questions ahead of a trip to Brentford and much more. This is your world champion beating installation of the Theatre of Red. Why, hello there, you happy Red you. In all the time that we have shared our weekly conversations, we haven't enjoyed many off the back of a win lately, particularly one that was as badly needed as what we received against Todd Bowley's Chelsea. And before we get into it, I want to thank you all for the kind messages of concern during the week. You will be pleased to know that I was up and functioning in time for Saturday evening's outing, and whatever sickness grasped hold of me has more or less left. Nonetheless, I do feel obligated to maintain these weekly episodes, and what better way to do so than on the back of 3 points. But seriously, your messages, they're all greatly appreciated, so thank each and every one of you. Now, as we know, Manchester United collected a deserved 3 points against Chelsea in the rain. That extends their unbeaten league record against the London side in the northwest that dates back to May the 5th, 2013. A run of over 12 and a half years, people. Now that is 13 consecutive fixtures that the champions of the world, as we're so regularly reminded across mainstream media, have made the trip north and failed to claim maximum points. Now, call me deluded, but while I won't be getting ahead of myself and declaring that 21 is just around the corner, it is okay to soak up a few hours of relative positivity here, isn't it? But instead, we see what is supposed to be the shining light in mainstream outlets, resorting to the ultimate hit piece less than 2 hours after the final whistle, ensuring further negativity is composed among an impressionable fan base, while the usual social suspects attempt to focus on whatever they can to generate further notoriety. Now, I'm sorry, but if you ever needed any incentive to evaluate who and where you get your news from, Saturday night should supply just that. But enough chatting about these parasites. Let's focus on Ruben Amorim, his victorious squad, and the 3 points that see United climb above Newcastle and City within 1 point of Chelsea and 2 of the Champions League spots. And that's after an opening 5 that included Arsenal, City and those money bags from London. We saw United claim a deserved win in a fixture that supplied many of the expected talking points, from red cards to controversy. Ultimately, United burst out of the blocks, as we've seen in multiple fixtures this season. They put Chelsea under significant early pressure, and they created the situation that saw Robert Sanchez dismissed for his challenge on Bryan Mbeumo. And what followed was a half of utter domination that returned 2 goals from Bruno and Casemiro, with at least 2 or 3 left behind due to poor decision-making, and what is becoming incorrect execution in the final third on a regular basis. And that, of course, was before Casemiro did what we have seen him do many times in England, an unnecessarily rash challenge that gave the referee a decision to make. The second half saw Amorim opt to sit deep and consolidate the only thing that truly mattered on the day, which was 3 points. He willingly conceded possession to a Chelsea side that mustered 1 effort on goal throughout the entire game. Inevitably, they did score from that, which is another familiar talking point. But United were comfortable without possession, doing the very thing that City did at 2-0 against us the previous week. And although Chelsea had 72% of the ball in the second half, I feel that is a far more damning statistic for them when you consider the amount of money that they've spent and their complete inability to create anything worthwhile outside of the pinpoint crosses from Reece James, which, give credit where it's due, they were absolutely devastating. Say what you will about even analysis across the English board, but when United win, it's about the performance. And when United lose, it's about the result. Genuinely, I thought I had seen the vast majority of bizarre takes during my time on social media. But Saturday night absolutely took the biscuit. Manchester United may have conceded possession, but they limited an unbeaten Chelsea side to a solitary effort on goal. And that was while creating 11 shots and multiple scoring opportunities themselves. As Sam Pilger said on last week's podcast, it was imperative that Amorim collected 3 points from the fixtures against City and Chelsea. And regardless of what way you want to pin it, they have done just that. Harry Wilkins got in touch last night, and he touched upon the season to date. He said, "Hey Shaun, a promising win against Chelsea when the only thing that mattered was the result. With 5 played in the league, how are you feeling about the state of play in Manchester?" Goes on to tell me that he loves the show and to keep up the great work. Well, thank you kindly, Harry. It is very much appreciated. I mean that. When you look at this, before a ball was kicked in anger this season, we had a wounded squad and a manager who set about removing several high-profile names. And that, of course, was in an attempt to solidify some semblance of an agreed culture in the dressing room. Marcus Rashford, Jadon Sancho, Anthony, Andre Onana, Rasmus Højlund, Victor Lindelof, and Alejandro Garnacho, who, may I add, was superb on Saturday evening. They all departed with a brand new front three arriving. Now, in any normal world, journalists and supporters would look at this and appreciate that there may be a need for understanding and patience while a new collective begins to integrate. But as we know, United are never afforded this. And furthermore, when you consider the fact that the fixture schedule returned Arsenal, Fulham, Burnley, City, and Chelsea in the opening 5, while I'm not screaming it from the rooftops, a return of 7 points ahead of the fixtures with Brentford and Sunderland is not an atrocious return whatsoever. Call a spade, well, I hate to say it, 3 of those 5, they would have set out with early aspirations of challenging for the title this year. And you say what you will about using metrics as a benchmark for analysing performances. I know that there are some grown individuals who get very angry about the sheer thought of this, but there has been far more positives than negatives on display, with multiple attacking opportunities being squandered on a weekly basis. Personally, I've always been a firm believer that if you continue to play in a certain manner and you create an abundance of goal-scoring opportunities, that you will eventually profit from these. And as we saw again at Old Trafford, and I don't intend on causing any negativity or generating an agenda here, but Ahmad was particularly culpable for wasting several opportunities on the evening. It continues on with what we've seen in recent weeks, with Benjamin Sesko entitled to feel a little aggrieved. All that said, Ahmad is getting into the correct spaces. He's making promising runs, and I have utter faith in him shedding this little blip that he's going through and returning to the man that we saw terrorise the league last season. But all in all, Harry, although I would like to have back that evening in Grimsby and the disappointment endured against City that did cut deep, I think that we can be more positive than negative at this stage. And that said, it will all count for absolutely nothing if we fail to capitalise on this little bit of momentum and carry that into a trip to Brentford before welcoming Sunderland to Manchester ahead of a second international break.
We show also that when everything is going well, we arrange something to make it difficult. But again, just the way that we start the game in the first ball, second ball. I remember when we scored the first one, we have many situations, 3 against 1, 3 against 2, goalkeeper outside of the box. In the last pass, we are not being perfect in that moment, and that can help us a lot to control the games and to win games. But we suffered together in the end, and that was a good thing. If you look at the game, we deserve to win.
Never far from generating talking points, good or bad, Bruno Fernandes opened the scoring on the evening in what was his 200th Premier League appearance for the club. And notably, the man is after joining Bobby Charlton, Ryan Giggs and Paul Scholes on the list of Manchester United midfielders who have scored 100 or more goals in red. And bizarrely, people will continue to ignore this and focus on a couple of passes that he did or didn't make. To expand, the man has made 296 appearances since arriving in the Northwest. He scored 100 and he's assisted 86, with 115 goal contributions in the Premier League alone. As you know, if you're a long-time listener or if you read any of the content that we put out on the Theatre of Red, I've always been rather vocal about my admiration for a footballer who has given the club his best years, consistently delivered returns, and he continues to bleed with each and every supporter. But these figures they're genuinely absurd when you consider what he's had to deal with since arriving in 2020. The man may be 31, but he is showing no signs of slowing down, and I couldn't be happier that he chose to stay at Old Trafford. Everybody needs to stand up and applaud, and even biggest begrudger and bemoaners across mainstream media have to recognise what an exceptional talent he is and the accomplishments that he continues to put out at this stage of his career. Another man who deserves to receive his flowers and is now beginning to do so, particularly after performance in the evening, was Matthias de Ligt, and the 26-year-old delivered another notable showing at the back. Joshua Halford emailed through shortly after the game to editor at theatre-of-red.com, and he asked, how do you view the progression of a man who was deemed unsuitable for the club because Bayern Munich didn't want him anymore? I think that's brilliant. That's something that I've spoken about for quite some time. I do hope you're doing well, Joshua. Thank you for the continued support here. Personally, I'm delighted that Bayern deemed him surplus to requirements, just as I am with Nazir Mazraoui. If you can't see it, de Ligt oozes class, and this is something that I've also been quite vocal about since his arrival. Unlike many, I won't be jumping on a bandwagon here because I've been beating this drum for quite some time. His composure, his ability, and reading of the game, they're absolutely exceptional. And despite featuring for Ajax, Juventus, and Bayern in what has been one of the most decorated individual careers, I genuinely believe that we are yet to see the very best of this man, and that's a fantastic prospect. What we saw against Chelsea was the continued growth of a footballer with 48 appearances in Manchester. 4 clearances, 2 interceptions, 2 key tackles, 1 block shot. He won 5 duels and he completed 43 of his 50 passes, while registering 1 key delivery in that time as well. He was integral to the second half defensive display, and for a man that many suggested was an injury liability, he looked like he could have gone for another 90 minutes at the final whistle. I'd like to add something here because there are 2 key talking points that I want to address outside of his obvious ability in the performances that we've seen this season. The first is the leadership that he offers on the field. This is an invaluable asset for the manager and his teammates. We know that Bruno wears the armband and he leads in his passionate way, often criticised sometimes for petulance, but de Ligt is a secondary leader at the back, and he installs confidence in his goalkeeper and the backline. While that seeps then into midfield and beyond, this cannot be understated in a team that is yearning to develop a new identity. Secondly, we've seen this new dynamic emerge in his game, specifically the improvement in his passing range and his decision-making in possession. People often use players and a lack of player development as a stick to beat Ruben Amorim with, but his fingerprints are all over this. And that works hand in hand with his sporting ideals, which were having ball-playing defenders dictate the pattern of progression in his side. I say this with a degree of confidence as a football supporter for quite some time. You can mark my words on this. We are going to see something truly special develop when Lisandro Martinez returns. As a trio of Lenny Yoro, de Ligt and Martinez, they possess so much quality in maintaining possession, progressing the football, and delivering quality passes into the final third. And furthermore, the platform that this supplies Senna Lamens to integrate into the first team will be absolutely invaluable. Still, as I have alluded to, all of this positivity will count for nothing if the same mentality is not carried into next weekend's trip to Brentford. There is no Premier League fixture that provides guarantees, and despite the troubles that they're facing following the exodus of players and manager, this is a team under Keith Andrews that will turn up for the arrival of the 2010 champions. You can make no mistake of that. Remember, United have failed to win in their previous 3 visits to the GTEC, and as Amorim stated in his post-match comments, it is imperative that the players treat this fixture as importantly as they would any other. We have now witnessed consecutive Old Trafford League wins for the first time since Erik ten Hag achieved the feat in December 2023. Believe that now if you can. But we need to see back-to-back Premier League outings with maximum effort and 6 points from 6 to generate further momentum. Goals obviously breed confidence and they generally return points. The narrative is never too far from a negative conversation in Manchester, but if this team can pull together a run of positive results, I firmly believe that there is every opportunity for a positive season, given the quality that exists within this squad. Inevitably, questions about formation and tactics will continue to surface because, let's face it, people need to generate content for their employers. And as we saw with the aforementioned hit piece after the game, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you don't, you can get in touch with me and I will tell you. But there are no links people will not go to for clicks. There is this fine line between having an opinion about progress and being deemed as a mouthpiece for a failing hierarchy. But as I have said for months, the issues that we have witnessed stem far beyond formations on a pre-match analysis screen. I have no intention of boring you now with the technicalities of what Amorim is attempting to implement, because I've composed multiple articles and I've spoken about it many times on various podcasts. But if you can just accept that he is not going to change to appease this dated call from the media, I promise you, your life will be a whole lot easier. And the crucial factor to consider is chance creation, missed attempts, and decision-making in the final third. For me, that is not a structural issue. That is players enduring the pressure of playing for Manchester United in this moment, and the weight of expectations that causes so many uncharacteristic errors. I mean, this isn't rocket science when you see so many players leave the club and find their feet in an alternative environment, folks. Whether or not you want to believe me, or give any of this more than a second's consideration, this team is committed to winning football games. And I will say this, contrary to the opinions of some social stars who would disregard my work. I speak with people on the ground at Carrington regularly who confirm this on a weekly basis. This dressing room is united. The players are happy with the coaching and the instructions that they're being given. And the source of frustration is the lack of positive results, which the players genuinely care about. This is where the frustration is coming from. And those reports that you see in some of the tabloids, they're largely exaggerated about player dissatisfaction. I can assure you that. This is something that I tweeted about well before Harry Maguire came out and spoke. Momentum is the most crucial factor. And I guarantee you that a couple of wins can create something very special within this group.
If you try to remember the game, you can feel it, especially in the beginning, 11 against 11. I don't remember a big play that we did. It's not about that in this moment. It's the second ball, the first ball, the aggression, the speed. Even Casa with a sent-off, but he was really aggressive. Of course, he needs to do better to in that moment, in that two plays. But we show that today, since the beginning of the game, we show that we wanted to win really, really bad.
Ladies and gentlemen, before continuing with the football chatter, may I briefly draw attention to the brave souls who faced the elements yesterday to provide the fan base with our wonderful fanzines. Having spoken with many of them, there was a categorical agreement that Saturday was one of the worst days that Red News has ever sold in. Now, if you follow the man on social media, Barney stated online that the difficulties of selling a paper product in wet conditions present their challenges. But the team remains committed to preserving their identity and a small part of the Manchester United fan culture. Unfortunately, average sales are down on the first day, but we can do our part to help as supporters, particularly here through the Theatre of Red. So if you have the means, please consider supporting Red News. They absolutely deserve it. They're about as good a collection of supporters as there is out there within the Red community. And I will pop all of the necessary details in the podcast description. You'll get to read some absolutely splendid content from a variety of writers, including yours truly. And it's just a fantastic keepsake to have. So please do what you can and keep the guys going. They deserve it. Their hard work well merits it. And moving on, Thomas Clark is a long-term listener here to the podcast, and he's got in touch again to ask a double-barreled question. Firstly, he'd like to know my take on Casemiro's decision that ultimately led to another red card. And he's also curious about how I feel about Benjamin Sesko and how he is adapting to life in England. Well, firstly, thank you for the continued support, sir. As I said previously, this isn't lost on me. I absolutely love each and every one of you. As I suspect, you share the opinion on the Casemiro challenge, which obviously frustrated me. From a perspective, you're in a position of complete control, dominating proceedings, and you're on the cusp of delivering an absolute hammering upon a rival. And then your veteran midfielder, who's a 5-time Champions League winner, a Copa America winner, he opts to make an unnecessary challenge in rubbish weather and conditions when he's on a yellow card. It's completely nonsensical, and it altered the dynamic of an evening that should have been a breeze. I know that he provided the crucial second goal, but in many ways, this was an outing that typified his time in Manchester. I find myself saying this quite a lot, but for such an intelligent footballer with such a decorated career, you have to wonder how he hasn't copped it, that you don't get away with Real Madrid's situations in England. I know you can pull it back and say, was the challenge worthy of a second yellow? That in itself is debatable. But it was a challenge that offered the referee an opportunity to make a decision. It was the definition of foolish, and those are the types of decisions that can cost managers their jobs. I mean, Amorim is entrusting him to be one of the leaders on the field. That is not how you show your response and your admiration. I know Ruben alluded to his competitive nature and a desire to live in the moment after the game publicly, but I can only imagine that this was far from as harmonious behind closed doors. And realistically speaking, let alone Amorim, but the supporters, the player himself, you have to know better than that. I mean, he made a challenge in a situation that was not required. And look at the fallout. It's given this mainstream outlet and this narrative a further narrative to spin and an agenda to dwell upon instead of focusing on the fact that United have picked up 3 points. But flipping the question to the second section about Sesko, ultimately I can't say I'm surprised with what we have seen, to be honest. I know that we're discussing a 22-year-old player with more top-tier quality than Højlund brought to the table, but the Premier League is an entirely different dynamic, and it's one that takes a bit of time to get accustomed to. In fairness now, he is doing about all that he can given the limited service that he's getting. And it needs to be said that his header onto Mbeumo that inevitably led to Sanchez's red card was a wonderful passage of what was perfectly engineered football. This was derived from the training field in which we saw a central defender dragged out of position to accommodate a piercing run for his teammate. I have no doubt that goals will come as the attacking element here gains more understanding as a collective unit. We must remember that he's only earned a total of 205 league minutes so far. It's not a lot, but it's also very impressive considering that he is operating within a brand new system with new teammates in a new country, a new lifestyle, and a new environment. You have to disregard all of the money and all of the speculation and all of the agendas and the narratives beyond it, because despite the fee paid and the false impression created by YouTube montages about his immediate capabilities, we have a very good footballer on our hands here. As I wrote about several months ago, he was never going to arrive and immediately deliver goals because he is still discovering himself as a leading light at the head of a European powerhouse's attacking lineup. But we are witnessing some of his standout attributes come to the fore, particularly in his physical presence, his ability to hold the ball up with his back to goal, and the height that offers an aerial outlet for the fullbacks and the wingers. All you have to do is just look at the number of crosses that were delivered into the area during the first half. Those will become an undeniable weapon in the weeks ahead. And hopefully, when he bags one, we will then see multiples follow. This is a boy that has a great temperament, a superb work ethic, and he's impressed the coaching team with his commitment to individual instructions. For me, I feel that it's imperative that the fan base gets behind him and aids in this settling period, because he has every opportunity to lead the line at Old Trafford for a decade. And on that, I shall bid you all farewell for another week, as I manage to scrape myself out of the bed and maintain this weekly love affair with each and every one of you beautiful people. Do your best, I will say, to block out the senseless negativity that follows a deserved win, and use their sensationalist nonsense as a reason to remove these individuals from your social cycles, because in all honesty, regardless of where you are in the world, where you're listening today and who you are, you just do not need that. As always, thank you for giving me this little slot of your day. And I apologize for the delay this week. It was out of my control. But be sure to like and subscribe wherever you're listening. And if you can take a couple of seconds to leave us a quick review, 5 stars on Spotify, whatever it is, it would be greatly appreciated. Feel free to get in touch via email or across any of our social channels. Also, if you are interested in exploring the world of football writing, don't hesitate to reach out and we'll see if there's anything that we can do together. I am always happy to help you in any way I can. And I'll be back to you all before Brentford this week to discuss whatever happens between here and then as we look forward to another trip down south. So take care, enjoy the 3 points, and I will speak to you all very soon.